We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
All right, cool. It's the Fuck It, We'll Do It Live. It's the second one. It's part 2. All right, so I'm Mike, he, him from Turn Leftist. And tonight I got with me Nick from the Intervention Pod. How's it going, Nick?
Yo.
I got Brandon from Comrades, he, him. How's it going, Brandon?
I'm all right.
Cool, cool. For my own show, I got Jaron, he, him. How's it going, Jaron?
Good, buddy.
Got Blaine, she, her. How's it going, Blaine?
Good.
Ward from my own show again, he, him. How's it going, Ward?
Yeah, it's good to be here.
And then from Decolonized Buffalo, we got Rick, he, him. How's it going, Rick?
What's up? I'm good.
Good to have you, man. All right, so tonight, I guess we're going to start off. I want to talk about Caleb Maupin. That's probably like the biggest pressing thing, since this is like a headline kind of like shoot the shit show. Hopefully, by the way, our sound levels are better this week. Apologies for last time, but I can fix it if anybody really wants. But I just didn't see the need to spend the time editing to do that. After all, this is a unedited show, so that would kind of defeat the purpose. But if anybody wants, I can fix it. But anyway,
Tate's going up in flames, so mission accomplished anyway, right?
What's that?
I said Tate is going up in flames anyway, right? So mission accomplished with it anyway. So.
Oh yeah, we personally got the Hustle University destroyed. So kudos to us for that one.
Yeah, that was all us. Pat on the back to y'all.
I didn't know that was you. Very, very stealthy.
How we roll. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Caleb Maupin. I think this is like the funniest headline going on, at least in the last 48 hours to me, because the whole thing with the patriotic socialists, like that's what this is all about, right? They're so concerned for the safety of women when it comes to trans people existing, and then when one of their own, like one of their most prominent, high-profile members, is just abusing people in their organization for years, they just turn a blind eye. But so I have some like a brief synopsis that I wrote up. I will put the article in the show notes, but it's on Medium, and it's all about, it's just statements from all the victims and people associated around Caleb Maupin about what he was doing to these people. And it starts off with the first victim. They call them Member 2, and this was a young woman, and she was like struggling financially to like make rent, living alone. And then Caleb swoops in. She's organizing in the organization, and he swoops in and gets very sexual with the conversations. He's like describing sex stuff that he likes, but in a platonic way. He's just saying like, this is what I'm into, like all these like kinks that he's got. And then she's like cool with it, doesn't want to kink shame or whatever. And then they're on some kind of trip, and he causes her to lose her job by making her have lunch with him instead of like taking her own separate Uber and getting to work on time. And she tells him beforehand, this is like possibly going to happen, that she could lose her job and it will really put her in like dire straits financially. And he doesn't listen. He does this anyway. And then she's like worried that her own father may lose his home because he's got some kind of like predatory mortgage where like if his credit score goes down even slightly, like he will lose his home. So this puts her in a really terrible position. By the way, this is like a terrible, like very quick and dirty summary of this whole article because it's a very long article with lots of statements that all go over the same kind of chains of events. So pardon, but like you can read the whole article if you want to. This is like some of the juiciest, like gossipy shit that we will talk about. But the whole thing about it is Caleb himself is like just like, he's a messy bitch who loves drama. Like he loves just gossiping and talking shit about people. It is ridiculous, dude. So, he was making her pay more money. He's like, he gets all these members to like live in this like hotel that they all share. And he was making her pay more money than like other people had been paying. Like, even though he knows that she's struggling, she's telling him all the time how like how much she's struggling. And he just says, oh, you got to do what you can for socialism. Like he's such a dick about it. Like,
Now, as we established before recording, I'm not very online and I don't know a lot about Caleb Maupin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm forced to ask, are you intentionally describing this to sound exactly like a cult?
well, so I mean, that's kind
This
of
sounds so cultish, man.
I
like
didn't
they
have
all
that
live in a
impression that that's what he
hotel
wanted
together?
to do, but like from reading this article, it really seems like he is trying to start a cult, and I didn't really have that impression. I just thought that they were like a weird organization, and the Patsocs themselves were like, closet fascists and TERFs who just want to pretend that they're socialists. But I didn't know about this culty aspect. But I don't know, Rick, you have anything?
There was a post that somebody said that he gave away loyalty rings, like he was Sauron and stuff like that. Yeah, I posted it on my Twitter.
That's great.
It's kind of weird, yeah. Lord of the Rings, yeah.
Well, These are just the steps to build socialism. Did none of you read Marx?
Right?
Yeah.
It's all in there.
Tolkien.
Marx also, forced people into financially vulnerable positions and then paid them to spank him, right? Isn't that right?
That's what Socialism 101.
I'm pretty sure Ingalls said that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I meant to read Lord of the Rings, and I read Lord of the Linens.
But I mean, I guess, Brandon, to answer your question, like Caleb Maupin is probably one of the biggest mouthpieces in the patriotic socialist quote unquote movement. I'm using big air quotes when I say
Well,
movement.
as you're talking about it, I'm like, I constantly see memes about Patsocs, and I don't fuck around in that world. I don't know what it's always talking about. So this is basically, anytime I see Patsocs shit, it's an indirect attack against Caleb Maupin, or is this bigger than I'm realizing?
Well, the Patsock thing is bigger than him, but he's probably one of the foremost guys. I don't know. I mean, Rick may have more to say on this than me. Like we are going to record another episode on this just on its own. But Rick is more well versed on it. But I can try and give like a short synopsis of Patsocs and the movement, and then if you want to fill in anything I miss, Rick. But it's like basically these guys who are trying to adopt American patriotism and socialism and meld the two together. And people compare it to Browderism or other previous movements in the past that have done similar things, but it always kind of boils down to trying to be patriotic and doing the American exceptionalist apologia, but then also trying to pretend you're a socialist. And then it gets even worse when they take on right-wing stances. They like unironically think that Trump is good. And like it's one thing like when we on our show say that like Biden is no better than Trump and that having Trump in office would have been, internationally no different than having Biden. I mean, I can't remember which one I said first, but the point is like we wouldn't go as far as to say that Trump is good or that Republicans are good or that we need to, as Marxists, say that gay people and trans people are bad and that they are all groomers and predators and that any support for LGBT people is, bourgeois liberalism and literally a Soros funded like kind of operation, which is what Patsocs think. They are
Okay.
just wholeheartedly adopting right-wing like stances and rhetoric, and then
They try to
calling themselves
gaslight actual Marxists into thinking that they're wrong, and because you're not in touch with the working class, like you're just talking about like the most reactionary elements of like the working class. These people are right. Like they're totally ignoring, indigenous Marxists, right? All this kind of stuff. The fact that how can you be patriotic for the most brutal imperialist power in the world, and it's a settler colony? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
No, bro, as
Like-
a socialist, I am always patriotic for the singular imperial core in the world.
Like,
What's
what
up,
the
Brandon?
fuck?
Before you started getting into specifics, I could almost imagine a path forward for it, because it just like obviously it immediately makes me think of the Young Patriots organization.
I'm
And
not familiar.
shit. Okay, real broad strokes, they were one of the three prongs of the like Rainbow Coalition in Chicago in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
It was the Young Lords, the Black Panthers, and the Young Patriots organization. They were known for being aesthetically they were very reactionary, but they were trying to take other people who were like Southern folks who had migrated to Chicago and like bring them into the folds. They were called the Young Patriots organization. They wore Confederate flags, which they did eventually scrap because I think Bobby Seale and Fred Hampton both kind of talked to him about it. But like I've even read accounts of Fred Hampton saying that they were allowed to wear it if they utilized it for good, which is to say explained why they wore it, that they weren't racist, and so on and so forth. And it obviously became eventually troublesome enough that they just dropped it altogether. They had that moment where they were all young and had to consolidate their ideas, and they weren't fully at that point when they formed. But that was the initial impression that I got you describing that, is these folks who grew up in America and think of America as a thing that offers them opportunity, but falling short of its potential. Do I agree with it? No. But I can imagine an avenue where it is constructive. And that avenue is something like the Young Patriots organization. Everything that you described about these guys just sound like assholes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not wrong.
I don't want to seem like I'm being an apologist for them. Just your like first like 2 sentence description. I'm like, I don't know. This kind of sounds like some good folks.
Yeah. Rick, did you have anything that you wanted to add to my description or synopsis of Patsocs in general?
Yeah, I think that, my observation is that they dismiss decolonization. They think it's unrealistic. They dismiss indigenous voices, and how they are trying to gather, kind of like consolidate their movement around, settler nationalism, which is weird. How can you like move forward, with settler nationalism? The whole point of settler, the American nationalism is bourgeois nationalism. So how can you move forward or and magically transform that into like, you know, communist nationalism? It's almost like that the article decolonization is not a metaphor, where it talks about the settler move to innocence. It's like they think because they put a communist mask on, they become innocent. They washed away their settler sins. They're not settlers no more. They actually don't like the term settler, but they acknowledge white privilege. I heard that from another podcast. It was a radical narrative podcast when they talk about how they do acknowledge white privilege, but they don't like the term settler. But they're settlers, right? So
Yeah.
how can you acknowledge one but not the other? It's because they don't want to lose the power. They don't want to lose the power they have. Nobody gives up their power willingly, especially colonists. So I think it's a weird narrative, especially people of color that buy into this narrative. Is to me is odd, you know. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, I mean, I'm glad you added that. That was a major point that I left out. And their opposition to decolonization land back always comes from a total misrepresentation of what that would even be. Like their arguments against it are always like, "Oh, what are you going to genocide the white people and you're going to deport the white people?" It's like, no, you're just literally projecting the atrocities that were done to indigenous people onto indigenous people because that's like your go-to move. And it's the same thing that they are doing with LGBT people. They are doing the exact same like projection of a problem that does not exist. And then it has become their whole thing. Like Patsocs are pretty much entirely involved with hating gay people and trans people and calling it fighting for women's rights, and then hating land back and decolonization and calling it like a bourgeois what do you call it, like online leftist bullshit. But would you have a word?
Yeah, no, it's like they just embody some liberalism in that moment where they're voicing their nervousness of losing their position in society due to the idea of land back.
Yeah, and they actively talk about recruiting on the right, and to me it's kind of odd how they're going to recruit on the right, especially since there's a lot of like white supremacist groups on the right, you know. So how are you going to convince these people to be communist unless they're going to be white supremacist communist, right?
Mhm.
So let's be honest. If you go to some parts of the country, this country is ran on the foundations is ran on like racism. It's not always class reduction. It's like, oh, working people. There's parts of the country that are straight up just racist, and I've seen them, right? So recruiting from the right is a really shitty strategy, in my point of view. They talk shit about, the people on the left. Are they trying to recruit from the right? Eventually, you're going to become a fascist. It's going to happen. So, yeah.
Judge Aaron?
So I really stay out of Patsoc circles because like I just don't give it any fucking credence. But hearing the description here is helping me understand a little bit more. I think in order for these people to rationalize whatever the hell is going on in their heads, they have to somehow divorce the idea of the evolution of this country from rampant capitalism and vis-a-vis rampant capitalism from puritanical Christianity, because that is the origin, the seminal point from which we see the growth of global capitalism. It came from the puritanical Christians that were in the early colonies. It came from the idea of husbandry of time, of the idea that if you're poor, it's God's will, that everything is the way it is because of a certain way and shape that makes sense, that is according to the doctrines of dogma and worth. We may not say that God chose Elon Musk to be the most rich person on the planet, but we say that he's intelligent enough to be the most rich person on the planet. We just took God out and replaced it with some other incalculable bullshit. And if you're going to try and hold on to American patriotism as it is and as it has shaped the world, there is no way that you can actually be revolutionary, because it is steeped in bullshit and in racism. There is no way to divorce these factors. So being a patriotic socialist is a walking oxymoron, it sounds like. You can't do that.
Yeah. Well,
Like
we did kind of. We're getting down the rabbit hole of patriotic socialist. I did not get to even the slightest juicy part of this.
Okay,
what he was
hit it
doing to
up.
these people, like it's because it
It's your
gets
boys
really bad. Like
drinking.
I actually, you know, and I'm gonna regret now that we're doing a live episode of even calling it juicy because of how bad this is. Like now I already feel bad saying that shit. But like
We know.
it's
Yeah,
it's
I like
salacious.
read
It is
forward
what it is. Like,
looking at the
Oh, Brett's got it
screenshots.
number
It's
one,
rough.
it's really. I mean, he the Bible quotes. This is where it comes in because he's pressuring this person. Like I said, this girl loses her job, and he's like he doesn't want her to get another job. He's pressured to not make her. He pressured to not get a part-time job outside the organization, and he wants her to be dependent on the org and therefore him. And he sends her like Bible quotes, and he talks about how like he's like, oh, I just want people to be as dedicated as I am. Like I sacrificed so much for this, and meanwhile he's got like a good paying job at like a news organization. I think he was like working for RT at the time or something. But so she ends up like doing sex work to be able to support the household, like herself, and like and also the household that she's living in with these people, and to keep up on her own bills. And then he kicks her out of that house and out of the org when she relapses on heroin. Like she's going through some rough times, obviously. And so then, as she's doing sex work, she is still in contact with him because she wants to remain close to the org. Like she would like to get back in with all these people that she's close to. And then she becomes Caleb's new dominatrix. And she agrees to this because she's desperate. She really needs the money. And then she wants to remain close to the org. And then he asks her not to come to any org functions or to his birthday party because she might run into his wife and it would be weird. And then I put in my notes, I'm like, Caleb is married, by the way, like, which I did not know until I got to this part of the article. Like, I had no idea he was married and doing all this shit. And like, so this is all just cool with his wife, who I think is also an org member. But and then so I quoted from the article here, the member two. She says, I later learned from other CPI members that this was a common tactic of his, isolating someone from the group through rumors and hearsay in order to make sure I didn't interact with other CPI members in case I decided to tell them about our arrangement. Truth be told, I was terribly afraid of anyone else in the organization finding out I was doing this with him. I was afraid if I told anyone, they wouldn't believe me, and if he told someone, I'd be shunned and ostracized. I saw Caleb as his dominant a few times in December 2021. He essentially paid me to reenact his childhood corporal punishment as a fatherly figure to discipline him. Included in this arrangement was the understanding that he'd also compensate me for the several hours he spent, quote, sexting me about his kink while we weren't seeing each other in person. He texted me so often, I eventually had to ask him to stop because I kept getting notifications from his sexually explicit messages while I was teaching my students. And then even though he agreed to pay for the sexting, he never did. And so this is what I mean about the juicy part. This is the only juicy thing about it is like what Caleb is into. Like this dude loves to get like spanked and has like a weird like what do you call it? Like that? I guess not weird. I guess I shouldn't kink shame, but like he has like some kind of fetish where he wants to get spanked and called like names or degraded or whatever, and like from some stuff he went through as a kid. And then he also just spends tons and tons of time telling these young women about all his childhood trauma to like get them close to him, be like, oh, I'm so vulnerable and I'm so like look, I'm opening up to you, and I'm definitely
Yep.
not opening up to like a dozen other young women in exactly the same way. Like
Yeah,
Trauma
remember what I
bonding's
said
a
about how
real
all of this
thing.
sounds exactly like a cult?
yeah, dude.
Well, and it's like manipulation tactics 101. Like trauma bonding is a very powerful tool. It is so real. If you are listening to this and someone is trying to like instantly connect with you like that, run the opposite direction. Run away.
Yeah, it sounded like kind of 2 episodes in a row about bad relationship tactics and shit.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, honestly, this is the less bad of the two.
I don't know. I mean, it's arguable. You think Andrew Tate is worse or Caleb Maupin?
I'm gonna go with the guy who openly
Ooh,
advocates
you did
hitting
Andrew Tate.
your partner.
That guy sucks a bag of dicks. Oh my god. Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh man,
It's
we're
just
arguing
different,
of like
right?
hitting
Between
your
like,
Mommy needs a
partner
refill.
or like manipulating your partner to hit you. Oh,
yeah, it's just
fuck.
different. I mean, they're both gross in their own ways, right? But like the way this guy is utilizing his organization and literally like getting someone in a position that they've lost the job because of the dedication to this organization and then taking advantage of that moment. Like, you know what? You want to get spanked, fucking like whatever. But like don't take advantage of your ostensible comrade. Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck if you like getting spanked.
Yeah.
Like, I don't kink shame. I might kink ask why if I don't understand, but like that's a whole different thing. But like,
Yeah.
just, like this fucking manipulation is and like coercion is so
Just being
absurd and
like,
ridiculous and
It's in the
disgusting.
name of socialism, and by the way, here's this Bible verse. And also, this happened to me as a kid, and it really gets me hard. Let me tell you. There's just a lot to
Jesus.
unpack
I
there.
know,
Like,
Taryn Lowe.
And to be extremely vulgar about it, like I'm not gonna pay you. I'm not gonna pay you for like essentially your emotional labor as you text
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
So much for Marxism.
Rick, what did you have?
You know what? I wouldn't expect anything less from this person. Like all his events, he's just selling his books. And everything's promoting him, his ideas, and I just feel like, that article gets even worse when you see the screenshots between him and his spouse. And it's just talking about moving to the woods and live streaming and making money, and it's just weird. If anybody's in politics to make money, you're in the wrong business, right? Well, for capitalists maybe, but not for Marxists. If you're in politics, in the left, then you shouldn't. You're not communist in that point of view, but that's my own opinion. Yeah, but fuck Maupin. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing just reeks of both like personal and political opportunism, right? Like that's one thing about this Patsocs stuff. It's so opportunistic, right? Like they claim to be Marxists, and I'm gonna hammer in on this idea, right? But like they very, at least from what I've seen of everything that these guys put out, like they very dogmatically just, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but it seems like they're only looking at maybe like Marx and Lenin, and even then they're only cherry picking like certain statements from Lenin and applying it completely out of the context. Like the nationalism of a subjugated people in Russia is very different than the nationalism of the bourgeois nationalism, as Rick was saying, in the U.S. today, right? But they'll cherry pick these Lenin quotes on nationalism, apply it when it's totally out of context, right? And they completely ignore guys like, just for example, I know there's a million people we could say, but like Fanon, like, and they're missing the point of like Marxism, and socialism evolving as like a science and looking at different contexts, and like they're calling people like us anti-Marxist. Like, come on, guys.
Bars, bro. What you got, Brandon?
Okay, so again, I'm not really up to speed on this guy, so I'm only working with what I've learned here in the last few minutes. But if I can just take a stab in the dark here, he's doing a dishonest representation of socialism. He's using it in some avenues to persecute folks, because I'm understanding he's a TERF, and he's doing it under the guise of patriotism. This almost sounds like, dare I say, National Socialism.
Yeah. It only took you like 20 minutes to make that connection where like these guys
I
are
made it
getting
like
sucked in
15
left and
minutes
right.
ago. I'm
Yeah,
just
dude.
like everything that you're like, yeah, I'm not going to say full-blown Nazi, but like
It's some
fascist.
Nazbol shit, like Nazbol or whatever the fuck you want to say. For sure.
Yeah, like, I won't say Nazi because I'll say fascist, and I recognize the distinction between the two. But yeah, he's definitely inching towards fascist territory, and sounds like a really dishonest depiction of Marxism. Like, even to call this guy an opportunist sounds just too generous to me, though.
No, Rick, you would know better than me. I know we're just generally talking about Patsocs and their views. I don't know how many of these we can attribute to Maupin himself. I was just mostly talking about Maupin because he's the topic of this current news cycle. But I know he is a Patsoc, and they generally hold those views. Are all these things generally things that he says, like on his channel and his videos or whatever?
Oh, it's rough because some of these Patsocs hide their disagreement with decolonization. I think Maupin did that for a while, Because I had him up on my personal Facebook, which is really rare to anybody to be on my personal Facebook that I don't know in person, right? And I had to delete him when I reached out to him to have a collab podcast, like for him to be a guest, and he told me straight up that he doesn't agree with decolonization, right? And then at that point, he started speaking more against decolonization, and I was like, something's wrong with this dude. So I just deleted, because I shouldn't have him on my personal Facebook, but I deleted him, and then but this rhetoric, I talk about this on my podcast, that this rhetoric it's nothing new, because I've been dealing with this since the late 90s, early 2000s. When I was in PSL, they used to say the same talking point with a lot of these Patsocs, and sometimes just straight up racism, right, in these orgs. And I dealt with it also with Socialist Party USA out in Los Angeles, and and then it's only recently that I feel like it's been very vocal when it comes to anti-indigenous rhetoric, trans rhetoric, and I'm trying to see where it's coming from, or if there's any, like, some people say it's an op and some people say it's not an op, but somebody pointed out that I do agree that it's weird that there's like a resurgence of American patriotism during a time when it's the lowest among the right and the left. Right? Why are these people coming up out of nowhere saying they're patriots? Especially quote unquote Marxist. And I think, like I said, this is not new. Everything Maupin has said, I've heard it like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And Maupin, or these mecha tankies, whatever they call themselves, like Haas and all of them. I heard all these things, and that's why I made the podcast, so I can address some of these. But it's coming out so much and so fast. That's why we have to do those episodes with you and I, because there's so much shit just with the indigenous aspect of it, not even touching the other aspects of it with the the anti-trans, the anti-whatever, the anti-furry for some reason, and I don't know if anybody here heard that they're anti-furries. So to me it's yeah.
I don't get it, but
about them so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, I was even trying to talk about Caleb without only kink shaming, because again, that's not something we want to do. Like, whatever you're into, but like that kind of is just the nature of most of the memes about the situation, just making fun of his kink, because it is kind of just, it's funny in context for these people who are going around bragging about the stereotypically masculine machismo kind of like American patriotism thing that they're putting forward, and then you find out that they all want to get like spanked in public, and then it's like when you find out that the people who are the most homophobic are secretly gay, it's like all of this is just too perfect. It's like, and I was saying
it's like Alex Jones having trans porn on his phone.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, when you want to like strip like queer and like LGBTQ issues down to like a bourgeois affectation, you don't get to do that shit anymore. Like, no, at that point, you have consigned yourself to sex for procreation only. Fuck off. Like, let people like what they like and do what they want to do and be themselves and be happy. Or don't tell people you guys aren't allowed to do it, but I can pursue it because it's different and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, not to even compare a kink to being trans, but like to have that opinion, which has been abandoned by every Marxist decades, if not a century ago. Like, no, I'm learning about all of this now, so I'm getting like angrier than I should. Fuck this guy.
Well, that's all I was getting at. I keep stumbling over myself, but it's the hypocrisy. Like, that's what it comes down to for me. It's like, it's always the Patsocs who are talking about how they are the real champions of women, and everyone else on the left is like some kind of liberal opportunist who's predatory to women. And then you find out that this is what they are actually up to in practice. But I kind of want to get Jaron and Blaine to read that Snapchat conversation between Maupin and his wife, because I think that would be really funny.
Yes, please.
But before we do, Rick, you had something.
Yeah, the whole trans thing is to me it's kind of weird how they accuse it of being like bourgeoisie or whatever, or liberal. Because like in indigenous communities, in a lot of indigenous communities around the world, we had people with different genders, different trans people, and even like we have the language to describe them, and they're part of our communities. So for them to say that it's part of capitalism, to me, it's fucking garbage. Obviously,
Yeah.
they don't understand anything besides their European colonized selves, But these people shouldn't be talking for us, But when we dismantle capitalism and patriarchy, these things are gonna reemerge. They're gonna reemerge again. These people with multiple genders, trans people, and more than they are now in society, to challenge the patriarchy, and we should support this community, and not claim, because to me they're just weird. To try to claim it that they're bourgeoisie is just really disgusting, and it's borderline, fascist in my point of view.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and likewise with the decolonization issues, taking the bourgeois stance on decolonization and land back, which is just keep things in the hands of the settlers, and then claiming that the people who say otherwise, who are actually fighting for the indigenous and working class people, to say that they are not the real Marxists. Like, it's always hypocrisy. They always are having misconstruing of things. Which have Brandon?
I want to. I agree with you on in principle, Rick. But I will say there have been numerous socialist leaders throughout history who have dismissed like trans people and queer people as a bourgeois affectation, and through good praxis did eventually come around. Like, I do think that there is room to have a shitty belief and learn from it and grow. The problem is, we've done that learning and growing. Like, Castro, like, is a good one. He was one of the points I've always heard made about Castro when I was younger and before I knew anything about Cuba was how how homophobic he was and everything else. And then I come to find out, like, in the 80s, or in the 80s, he came around and said that during the revolution there was too much going on for them to try and like learn about all of these issues, and he handled it incorrectly and poorly, but that he no longer felt that. And that was how Cuba ended up being one of the first countries. Well, I mean, I don't know what metric you call it here, but in the early 90s, Cuba was covering gender reassignment surgery for trans people. 20 years before that conversation's even happening in other parts of the world. So, like, I'm not going to outright dismiss somebody who holds certain shitty beliefs if I think that there's room for them to grow. But in 2020 or 2022, whatever the fuck year this is, there's not really a lot of room left to have that conversation.
Well, the Patsocs
Like,
are going
it's been
backwards.
rehashed too many fucking times.
So many of these Patsocs are people who were for LGBT rights for years now, and now all of a sudden they're getting sucked in. They're saying, "Oh, I was actually wrong about that. I'm suddenly a homophobe now, and I'm a Christian." It's like, go fuck yourself. Like, from the bottom of my heart, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, they're trying to do it under the cover of like, oh, like you're out of step with the masses, and like what sections of the masses, right? Like who are you talking to, right? Are you talking to indigenous people? Are you talking to black people? You know what I mean? Like, who are you talking to again? And you're taking, again, if we're talking about like, okay, because they're talking about like the ostensible like Trump base, right? Which is a small fraction of a small voting base to begin with, right? Like what, 40-50% of the population votes to begin with, right? And then what is the section of even Trump's base that spills out this reactionary bullshit? You know what I mean? So who are we talking about, guys? Like, that's who we're going to appeal to? That's who we're going to build the movement on? Really?
Subway.
Well, and just to piggyback off of that, like, doing anti-racist, like anti-bigotry work is not necessarily always the same. Or no, let me rephrase that. Doing anti-capitalist work does not always lead you to anti-racism, anti-bigotry, and things like that. But a lot of times it does. In my opinion, anti-racism, anti-bigotry, and centering like minorities, that usually does lead to anti-capitalism pretty much every time.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
And the funny thing, and this is a really funny thing I've encountered in my personal life, where they're saying that that these people are out of touch with like the masses or whatever. He's a reporter. He's a journalist. Like, Marxists love to fetishize like the blue collar worker, and I'm glad that we're actually like getting away from that a little bit. But I've been accused, like, for my views, being like, oh no, you're out of touch with what like working people really want. And that's hilarious to me because I am the most blue collar person I fucking know.
Yeah.
Like, I work intermittently in machine shops as a mechanic and doing fabrication work. So I love it when a journalist like this like would imply that like we're out of like I'm the most in touch with the groups that he's talking about, and no, I
Yeah.
don't know. I can't abide this shit.
All right, well, let's Jaron and Blaine, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that Snapchat conversation between Caleb and his wife. So I guess they're
Yeah.
both org members. And to give a little context, like this is where the culty stuff comes in because he's again, you'd have to read the article to get the whole synopsis and get all of it, but the brief summary is that he has all these grand visions about getting some kind of cabin out in the woods and having all what he calls the kids, which I guess is like all the org members. It's like, to be fair, that's how I refer to all the kids in the Discord. But I'm not predatory like this guy. It's just a little different. Like, I also don't want to like move in with them, and I don't actually do that. Like, he literally was living with these people. It's weird. But so he's talking to his wife about how he's going to, yeah, get this cabin. But I don't know. You guys want to read that? See if that comes across well.
That's not how adults act. That's why I am moving up in the world and you aren't. I don't know, have social skills.
No, you don't. You
You
don't know have social.
You don't
Like-
know, have social skills.
Like me, the wife, I don't.
You got to read the wife part.
Oh, you are the one. That's not a response. That's like a different response.
I am asserting myself like an adult, and I might get my bonus.
Dream.
Eventually, I'm going to make enough money with CPI that I will quit RT, and then I will leave you also. I'm going to set up a big compound in the woods where I live with all of my kids, and I studio to broadcast my show over the internet.
You are crazy. And then emoji. And I that's cray. Well, this
That's the
is
best
a
part of
shit
it, right?
show.
These people shouldn't be married.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Kind of wanted to dissect that. Like, Blaine, you pointed out that response she had at first was like, it just says, "You are the one." And I don't know if that like she was in the middle of typing a response and she was going to say, "You are the one that did such and such thing," and then hit send by accident and just says,
I
"You are,"
see.
or if she's just like geniusly passive aggressive because this guy is very wordy and loves to hear himself talk, obviously. And then he goes, "You don't know, have social skills," and then she just goes, "You are the one," because it's just like, no, you, no.
No, you.
And then he says, "And I might get my bonus," which is like, you know, a 25-year-old's thing to brag about. But then she's like, "Dream," which is just perfect. Like, no punctuation, no nothing. I love it.
She doesn't seem too concerned about being left by this dude.
Yeah, I think she gave that the exact amount of energy it deserved, honestly.
She's my hero.
Yeah, it was great. All right. I mean, that's mostly what I had on Caleb Maupin. We can just continue to talk about them, Patsocs in general, or just like his misdeeds. But like, yeah, I mean, go read the Medium article. I'll put it in the show notes. Anybody can read about this, all this drama that's going on. But I'm just happy to see a bad Patsoc go down. I don't know. I guess cancel culture works sometimes. And I'm just waiting for some dirt on Infrared or Has to come out because I'm sure that is going to happen anytime. Like, why is it always these people who just seems like they don't have a lot of concern for women in like the way that they speak, but then profess that they are the most concerned for women? Why is it that they always have this weird misogynist shit come out? I don't know. It's such a weird coincidence. So Blaine.
Because women won't pick them.
Yeah.
It's crazy how the dudes that are like patriotic for like everything the US stands for have really shitty views on basically everything. It's almost like, I don't know, we as communists try to like focus on contradictions and like they just ignored that shit at the gate.
Mm-hmm. Well, does anybody else have any other stuff? Since again, my 5-minute topic took up the first 50 minutes. Blaine, what'd you have?
No, you do. You do it.
You gotta at least help me because this shit is so stupid.
Which one?
The Ron Watkins thing.
Oh my god, Ron Watkins fled to Australia. I have to talk about it with somebody.
You need
Yeah.
to give background on Ron Watkins though,
Oh
because
my
like
God.
this is like in conjunction with the Trump Mar-a-Lago shit and the January 6th, whatever.
We have 12 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, go.
Ron Watkins is the guy who is owner of 8chan,
Yeah.
8kun, and apparently there is like significant evidence that shows he is Q, like dummy evidence
Yeah.
that he is Q.
Yeah, there's a bunch of online backdoor tech bullshit that's like every time
Finger pointing
Q
right
does
at him.
something, it's tied to Ron Watkins.
I think he's also been running for a political office in Arizona, and it's been going horribly. It has been going hilariously bad, thank God.
He lost a lot of money.
He lost so much fucking money. We love to
I love
see
it.
it. And he, I think, is avoiding a subpoena for the J6 committee. So he fled to fucking Australia after the raid on Donald Trump because he either saw that he is not safe from the FBI or they found documents or both that would probably, I'm speculating. This is purely speculative, but
If they could tie him in any way to any of the new radicalization that is happening, yeah, he would be pretty fucked.
well, and then he was on some shit about how Australia is like a really tragic place because they don't have guns and like what the fuck else did he
He
even?
said they don't have guns and they have like the police are now the Gestapo and they're just taking people away for not being vaccinated. And then he followed it with like, well, I'm going there.
What?
I thought that they lived in like Southeast Asia.
Yeah, he was in the Philippines for a while.
Yeah, probably for some other super illegal reasons, I would speculate. But
It was like QAnon
Yeah.
Anonymous has done a lot of deep dives on Ron Watkins, and
Juicy.
that's the
There was
place
like
to
a
go.
whole ass like documentary series about those guys on
Oh yeah, there
some
was that
network.
too. I think it was on HBO.
no, it's yeah, you're right. I've seen it, and it's almost like a continuation of that shit ass HBO thing on the anarchists or whatever. Same vibes where it's just like internet bros that think they're doing something and they're not, and then they fuck themselves, and then they look back at themselves getting fucked, and they're like, "Why am I getting fucked?"
Yeah. Nice. We covered that in 2 minutes. Okay, in Georgia, a bunch of music festivals are getting shut down left and right because this crazy bitch named Philip Evans is going around suing everybody for not being able to bring a gun to these festivals. So Music Midtown pulled, 404 pulled, anywhere that is on public grounds.
Yeah.
They lost I don't know if they've lost a lawsuit, but I know that the Georgia Supreme Court ruled in favor of this guy.
He's a libertarian.
Sure. I don't know. Probably.
Ironically, using the government to his disposal. Hypocrite much?
Every time.
But I would like to point out Music Midtown is a Live Nation event.
Look, all I'm saying is I don't feel comfortable seeing the Chainsmokers unless I can bring a 9mm. Okay. I mean,
unironically, yes.
You guys don't understand that to stop a bad guy with a gun, you need a crowd of people with guns waiting outside for them.
And that's if everyone has good aim. You know what I mean? Like, this just gets messy the more you look at it, the more, I'm just saying, I don't know.
I think I meant to ask you, why did Ron Watkins flee to, what was he fleeing exactly? What was the specific thing? Do you know? Or did we?
Why would he go to somewhere who's way friendlier with the U.S.?
I know, right? Like, what a dumb place to go.
Yeah, they'll fucking extradite you, man. They'll fucking extradite you.
They will.
It's not safe there.
I feel like the
bro.
Philippines would too, but not nearly as fast.
Yeah.
Aside from the deadly animals, like, yeah, bad choice all around.
Well, then you got to consider, though, this man is at this point very likely broke.
Yeah.
So let's imagine maybe he had to liquidate some properties. Maybe he kept the one in Australia and got rid of the other one. I have no idea, but he's obviously strapped for cash because he spent all of it on his shit ass Arizona congressional run.
Yep.
Nice.
Of which I think he got like 2.5% of the vote.
I think he got 4. We're splitting
I think
imaginary hairs.
it's
at this
I know it was
point. Who
bad.
cares?
I remember hearing that.
He's just gonna slip up, and those fucking Australian authorities are gonna fucking no warrant needed. Just go through all his fucking digital records, like all his devices. They can hack all that shit with no warrants. That's that authoritarian Gestapo he was talking about.
Yeah.
He'll fucking raid all that shit, and then we'll see some more shit come out.
Can I ask just a question for the room though, which is like it's the obvious softball question. Do you think that they could or will arrest Donald Trump?
I hate this question.
Fool me once.
Ward's always going to say no just because he's worried about getting fooled. Like, he just doesn't want to say that he will. And then
No, because fucking Mike made fun of me that one fucking
why.
time because I was
sorry,
like,
buddy.
yeah, he'll get arrested. And then he's made fun of me ever since. So, no, I don't think he will because I don't want to get made fun of.
I also will say that he won't. And I just will take the stance that I will happily be proven wrong about anything on this show. Like, I want desperately for everyone to come in here and own me. I want that TikTok guy in a couple weeks to come in here and tell me, actually, climate change is going to be fine, and
Yeah.
I just need to start my own business, and it's all going to be cool. Like,
I-
that's what I
I-
really
yeah,
want.
me too.
Genuinely.
Thank you so much.
Bro, I'll beat him to it. As soon as I see the news, I'll fucking call you and be like, ha, bitch, I was right.
I can imagine a world where he gets charged and prosecuted, but not a world where he ever does time.
Yeah.
Because it would set an ugly precedent for future presidents if, like, if a president actually gets charged and convicted and sentenced for crimes committed in office.
I mean, that's the tired point, right? Like, but that it's so true, where it just opens the door for all of the criminals. Right?
But then also politically motivated charges. What did you have, Rick?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the Patsocs are using Trump as some martyr against the government.
Oh,
It's the weirdest
fuck.
shit. Yeah.
We just went full
Oh,
circle.
FBI.
That sucks ass.
Yeah, and like using the whole Mar-a-Lago thing to be like, oh, like we should use this moment to radicalize conservatives that now hate the FBI.
Yeah. Some weird shit, dude. Mental
That won't work.
gymnastics. Gold
You
medal.
I think that you should use the moment to strip the FBI of authority, but the people who disagree with, or who like suddenly agree with like defund the FBI, it's for such wildly different reasons. Like you're not gonna reach a compromise with those people.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I hate the FBI because they assassinated Fred Hampton. You hate him because he peacefully raided a fat old oligarch's house and maybe took some stuff. Like,
Oh, no.
we are not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is the funny thing about these Patsocs, right? Is the stances that they just so happen to take. Like, they are always conveniently on the side of the Republicans on every issue, and I don't know why that is. It's just such a weird coincidence.
This
in every
feels
way
like
that
it has
they're
a lot
really
of
Marxists.
parallels with Black Hammer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's another recent drama that we could sort of talk about. I mean, I don't know much about it other than like Ghazi got arrested and they got raided by the FBI. And I'll tell you, this kind of hits close to home to me because it's the only other org that I joined, not Black Hammer. I joined the Uhuru org after we had Comrade Diop on, and I joined the African People Solidarity Committee, and it's a great org. Like, I joined it, and I'm a dues paying member, and now I'm like legit worried that I'm gonna get fucking raided by the FBI just because I'm like on their rolls of the computers that the FBI took from them because they got raided as well as the Black Hammer org, which I also didn't realize Black Hammer was an offshoot of Uhuru, but apparently that was the case. So then, but yeah, I
They
mean,
weren't exactly like in good standing with each other, were they?
no. Like, Ghazi had, I think, been ousted like years back, or he voluntarily left because they were like too revisionist for him, like because he's just too hardcore or whatever. I don't know, but like it was just so the Black Hammer org was obviously the very weird version. And what I was getting at was that this really bums me out because even Chapo had a really fucking shitty episode about this whole situation because they talked about Black Hammer and described them rightfully as a weird organization with predatory Ghazi at the top of it doing really fucked up shit, just like Caleb Maupin over here. But then they also just kind of described Uhuru and the African People's Solidarity Committee and the African People's Socialist Party as a weird organization. And I really took offense to that because all they did was write them all off as crazy or as a bunch of white people who were like running an org. And like literally the whole reason behind it is that the people in the org pay reparations. Like when I pay monthly dues, it goes to programs that fund doulas and midwives for people who can't afford them on their own. They build houses for people who cannot afford them. They open up food co-ops and like farm sharing organizations. And then there was another one. It was like literally education. Like they are doing on the ground material stuff with this money that I give them. And it's like there's nothing illegal that they're doing. They're not suggesting anything insurrectionary or even like revolutionary. Like their idea of revolutionary is not like the fucking white boy LARPer shit of like blowing things up and being like a fucking Chris Dorner or whatever. It's like they're literally just helping people on the ground, and that's what that work is all about. And that's why it really pissed me off when Chapo just wrote them off as a bunch of loonies. And it's like it really made, and I've been bottling that one up for a week or so now. So sorry if that just came.
And that's what you get for
Yeah.
listening to
I
Chapo.
had no idea Chapo did that. That's nuts.
No, and I was gonna say like my only context on most of my context on the Black Hammer stuff comes from that episode, and I've been I still listen to Chapo sometimes just to get a laugh and stuff like that. But they were having a conversation just broadly in that episode about like decolonization, and it just just reinforced how kind of unserious that show is in terms of actually politics, because they're like, oh, and like I think the quote was, it was like, oh, and the worst people or whatever, the most annoying people in the room are throwing out this word decolonization. It's like, no, motherfuckers, like if you're having a serious conversation about like leftism in the US, you need to be talking about that. Like, sorry, but like
Also, I can be annoying and still right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do it all the time. Ask my wife.
Yeah, you know what, Nick? I forgot until you said that was another really annoying part about that. They just described everyone who's concerned about actual like material parts of Marxism are just like annoying people who are just like literally just doing like the SJW thing, right? Like they're doing that
Yeah.
old fucking hat thing, and you can tell exactly where that's coming from. It's because they're rich fucking kids who live in LA or Long Island or wherever, and they can't actually talk about something that would affect them materially because then they have to start looking in the mirror, and you cannot, and that's where it always comes to with these fucking libs, right?
Yeah, TrueNon just did a 2-part on Black Hammer. They just released it. It's really good, and they don't
Yeah.
shit on like any of the Uhuru movement.
Yes, they
or
did though.
I didn't
I
listen to it yet.
I must be misremembering.
It was like it wasn't like a strong dismissal, but they said some really like dismissive shit of Uhuru, and also like God, I always forget the name of the rap group. I can remember the name of the members, but there's a really super political hip hop duo from Florida from like early 2000s that I guess was affiliated with the Uhuru movement. That stuff, like their music turned me on to a lot of radical politics back in the day because like they go in depth on a lot of things, and they were also making fun of them. Kills me.
Yeah, I must
They're a good group.
misremember because I remember they hit on the point when Ghazi left. That like he immediately started saying like, "Oh, I was a victim of them. They're very cult like," and so yeah, I must misremember. But yeah, Ghazi like from this jump, like as soon as he left, he was like, "Oh, I was a victim. They're a cult. Like, don't fucking go over there. You should be over here with me."
Yeah. Well, I mean, my closing thought on both of
Dead
these topics.
Press. That's who it is. I couldn't remember the name for a second.
This all just makes me feel very normal, I will say, just on a personal note, like, because when I see like, what Ghazi and the Black Hammer org were up to, I'm like, that's out there. Like, I don't know, I don't get it. It's weird. And then like when I see what like this Caleb Maupin and his cult are up to, it's like it's fucking weird. And then like every time I'm like worried about like, I don't know, like I have this we have all these kids in the Discord, and like there's a bunch of fun conversations in there. Not weird at all now. Like anything that I think even was going on that I thought was weird before, like people talking about their pets or whatever, like bullshit they're talking about, it's like not weird at all. Like we are very normal, and I'm very happy that we have this very normal group of normal leftists, in contrast with these cults that are springing up all over the place. And I say that because I literally was saying to Sterling, I was like, it almost makes me want to like. It's gonna sound terrible. It makes me want to walk into the FBI office and just say, "Hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm up to. Just check it out. Like, we're actually very normal. Like, we are like pretty reasonable,
Not do that.
and like you do
Mike's
not have to worry about
whiteness
us, I
is
promise."
showing, people. Mike's whiteness
I'm
is
saying.
showing.
Hey,
I don't
listen,
wanna-
who's in charge of my file? Listen, buddy, I'm so normal.
Let's get a
Yeah.
beer. Nick.
That would look even weirder, right? That would look weirder to do that.
Yes,
right?
it would look so much weirder.
You guys, like, I'm not the one you need to worry about. I'm not doing this shit. Like, I'm just hanging out over here in the house. Like,
no,
What
I
you
get
got,
the
Brandon?
sentiment.
The one thing I think is interesting that I would like to touch on is, so what you were saying that they were talking about, like, what, trying to get land and like do whatever with their kids. Like that was one of Caleb Maupin's plans.
And also Black Hammers, but yeah.
Well, but that's why I bring it up, man. Anytime a Marxist wants to become separatist instead of revolutionary, or at the very least reformist, something about separatism just seems wildly off base to me. That at that point you're no better than hippies in the '60s who were starting a commune. You're not doing anything to improve the social conditions of anyone. You're just saying like, I'm not going to participate anymore. At that point, you're not a Marxist.
Yeah.
If you want a good chuckle, look at the 3D the renderings of like what Black Hammer's like supposed like compound was supposed to be. It looks like some fucking weird Teletubby village.
Oh, sick.
What's up, Rick?
These are my closing remarks. I wonder where Caleb bought the ring, though. For real, it's like where you get it from? You know, a store. How did he choose it? He's like, oh, this one has a little heart in it. You know, I don't know.
Have you seen screenshots of it? I want to see what these things look like. I'm dying to read.
There's a picture of it online.
Okay, I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
I'm pulling that up right now.
All right, well, let's wrap it up there. I can have everybody plug their shows if they want, but yeah, I'll just wrap it up. I'm just gonna say, yeah, we're just very normal. Like, and I'm gonna take it all the way back to like one of the first episodes that we recorded, when I will say that like I'm not worried about any of the shit we say or do online, not because I'm like trying to hide any revolutionary or like fucked up shit that we're doing, but literally because if you think that like you need to go get a compound in the woods, or you need to stock up on a bunch of guns and do some like adventurous shit, then you literally do not understand Marxism. You do not understand that this shit only works when you have the whole population on your side. Like that's the whole point of the Vanguard Party guiding the people's revolution, is like the people are the big part of that. Like you and your little group of like has incels are not going to be that revolution. I'm sorry, you guys. Like even you guys with all your millions of YouTube followers that, yeah, I'm jealous. I wish I had that many followers as like has or whatever, but like you're still not going to do it. Like that adventurism is not Marxism. And that's why like it's good to feel normal. It's good to be like one of the normal ones.
Sorry, but if I could just add a thought onto that, Mike, because I think there's a space where you can get into some of this stuff where it's like, okay, you're fighting very online things, right? But it is, I think in this case, it is a little bit different because they do have all these followers, right? And we're in a time where, like, again, it's becoming more normal to be a socialist, anarchist, communist, whatever you want, just because the fucking material conditions are deteriorating around us, right? But you get guys like this with followings, and that's why we need to do our part to combat this shit, because this is not socialism, communism, whatever.
Well,
This
yeah.
isn't it, right? So like we do have to fight against these thoughts, right? And it's dangerous that they do have these followings on some level.
Because
So,
they're dangerous to other working class people. They're dangerous
Right.
to trans and LGBT people.
100%.
Whereas, like, if you wanted to be an actually effective socialist movement, you would have to be dangerous to the government and the country. And again, you can't do that until it's everyone. And that includes all the trans and gay and working class people and all the indigenous people and people of color. Like, they're going down the wrong door. I'm harping on it. I'm repeating myself.
So
Nick, plug your show.
what you're saying is that Vaush is not the guy to lead a protracted people's war.
We never said that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, bro. He may be. Mouse.
Vouch is still wrong, by the way.
I
But yeah,
can't
so
wait
I'm Nick
until his
from-
text messages get dropped somewhere.
Oh, those are going to be good too.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Fuck it. We're done.
All right, yeah, I'm Nick from the Intervention Pod. Thanks for doing this, Mike. It's good to be with all you guys tonight. Yeah, and it is nice to talk to normal lefties. That's
Right?
it's a sentiment I'll share.
Brandon, go ahead, plug yours.
Oh, I'm Brandon from Cars and Comrades. Listen to it or don't. It's pretty niche. Whatever.
Oh yeah. And Jaron and Ward, you guys are on my show. Rick, go ahead, plug yours.
Yeah, I'm at Decolonized Buffalo. I do want to say that loyalty rings are yesterday. Get matching tattoos. Just saying. You know? So, yeah, Decolonized
Blaine, any
Buffalo.
thoughts on that?
What's that word?
Blaine, any thoughts on that?
I will
What about matching
accept-
tattoos?
Yeah, like wait, let me make sure I heard that correctly because it will change my answer.
I said that loyalty rings are yesterday. You should get matching tattoos instead.
Only with a book report of the synopsis of the description of the Tree of Gondor will be accepted payment. I've never read Tolkien. I have no idea.
Or Bitcoin.
That's actually pretty good.
I say I'm a big Tolkien fan, and you almost had me fooled there for a second.
No,
Legit,
I
like-
actually have. That was sarcasm.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Oh,
If
so
you
there are a
could-
lot of
if you
Tolkien
could
fans.
leave me to live in a Tolkien world, you would probably do it, and I can't blame you.
Can't refute this.
All
I
right.
like elves.
I'm going to cut it off there. All right. Thanks
Out.
for being you guys. It was
All
fun.
right.
Everybody's links to
See
the
you guys.
podcast will be in the show notes. Later.
Later.
Night.
Later.
Take it easy,
See you
y'all.
guys.